Hello everyone, and today we're going to be talking about community ecology. In particular, we're talking about species interactions. We have five main types of interactions between species: predation, competition, mutualism, and commensalism. So for each of these, there are positive and negative interactions. So commensalism is positive 0, so one gets a benefit from it and the other gets nothing. Mutualism is positive positive, so both benefit from the relationship. Parasitism is positive negative. Competition and predation are slightly different for the fact that competition has both species or both individuals going against each other, where predation is one is hunting and getting food, and the other is being the prey. Predator eats all or part of an individual of another species, which is called the prey. And this interaction influences the size of each population and where and how each species lives. So here we have a predator-prey curve. If we look at the snowshoe hare, we see it goes up to the 80,000s and then back down close to a few hundred. And then it goes back up to about 160,000, then back down as the years go in a cycle. And then we look at the red curve and we see on the right it says thousands of lynx. Right here, the thousands of lynx. So as we read this one, we're looking and we see it goes up to about 4,000 and then down and then a little below 3,000 and then close to 6,000 and then just keeps going up and down. And the two curves are really close to following each other. So as the number of hare starts to go up, a few years later, the number of lynx starts to go up. And as the number of lynx start to go up, the number of hare starts to decline due to this predator-prey relationship. Natural selection will favor the evolution of the predator for adaptations for finding, capturing, and consuming prey. So snakes, for example, have a sharp sense of smell and with heat sensing pits below each nostril, as well as venom to kill or disable their prey. And spiders have sticky web, where natural selection will favor adaptations in prey that allow for them to escape, avoid, or otherwise ward off predators. For example, they have camouflage, as seen here. They have chemical defenses, mimicry, and the ability to run away. For plant prey, they also have sharp thorns, spines, sticky hair, and tough leaves, as well as chemical defenses. For example, a capsaicin is in peppers, which is the spiciness of a pepper that most animals, when they try to eat it, go, wow, they don't like it because their tongue can sense it. And it creates this very nasty reaction to them. So that's how plant prey can defend themselves. So here we have an example of camouflage. Can you see where it is? It's right here. Here we have a moth. Let's change the color of the highlighter a bit. Much better. And then here we have a gecko, which you guys should be able to see because of his tongue right there. So here we have a picture of a spider. I'm going to wait a little bit and see if you can find it. Spider is right here. Here we have an example of mimicry. We have moths and owls. And moths will mimic the eye spots of an owl to keep birds from eating them. And then down here, we have the poisonous coral snake and the scarlet king. The scarlet king is non-poisonous, and so this is an example of Batesian mimicry. Batesian mimicry is when a non-poisonous animal will mimic a poisonous animal or a more lethal animal. Here we have a wasp and a clearwing moth. Now, this is an example of Müllerian mimicry, where two things that are poisonous will mimic each other or are dangerous will mimic each other. And this will keep other predators from coming and going after them. Here we have competition. So with competition, it's does there really need to be a winner? Is the relationship between organisms that strive for the same resources in the same place. So the resource might be food, water, space, or even mates. So here we have a graph about species A and species B and the zone of overlap. This is where when we see species A and species B and they're eating the same type of food, well, they're going to be competing over that same type of food. We have two different types of competition, intraspecific, which occurs between members of the same species. For example, here we have two male birds of the same species competing for mates. Another thing you could have is more to home's example. If you only put one bowl of dog food down for two dogs, that would form into some type of competition. Interspecific competition is when we have members of a different species competing. So predators going after the same prey. So if we go back to our predation example earlier with the snowshoe hare and the lynx, if we now bring in the Arctic fox, then we have the lynx and the fox both competing over the hare. Interspecific competition can result in a reduction of number of either species or the elimination of one of the two competitors. And this is usually what ends up happening is one species is using the resource more efficiently than the other, which reduces the amount available to the other species. The law of competitive exclusion says that no two organisms can occupy the same niche for an indefinite period of time without one eventually migrating, dying, or undergoing resource partitioning. Resource partitioning is the use of a resource in slightly different ways or a different time to allow both species to use the same resource. Now, I've given an example of this before. So we're going to draw this. This is our niche that we're using. And we have one bird that comes in and uses it during the spring, but they leave during the winter because they have a different wintering ground. And then one that comes in during the winter and leaves during the spring. So they have a different breeding ground. That's a form of resource partitioning. Another form of resource partitioning is we have this lovely tree. I am not even going to joke that it is a great drawn tree. But in this lovely drawn tree, we have different types of bugs and animals that all live in this tree. So you have some that might live on the top or the more outermost layer of the tree, some that live in the middle, some that live at the bottom, some that live in some that live or use where the trunk is. And that's all a form of resource partitioning. They're not competing even though they're using the same resource. Competitive exclusion is when niches overlap. So here we have an example of these two paramecium species, and they both grow and thrive in similar environments. And then what ends up happening is when we stick both of them together, we either get competitive exclusion, where one ends up dying, or resource partitioning, where one takes over one half and the other takes the other. This is a form of resource partitioning. We have the balanus muscle, and it has taken all the low tide area, where the hypothalamus has taken the high tide area, and they're partitioning that resource of what they can use. Competition and evolution. The evolution of differences in a characteristic due to competition is called character displacement. And this is a way of reducing niche overlap. So for example, here we have these finches. And in particular, these finches are Darwin's finches, which we'll be talking about later on in the year. And what he ended up seeing was he saw that the differences in beak size reduced competition by allowing species to share the island to favor different food sources. For example, one will eat more berries, one will eat more nuts, one will eat more bugs, one will eat more seeds. And it's all about how they can crack or get into those areas. Symbiosis. This is a close, long-term relationship between two organisms. So for parasitism, one individual is harmed while the other benefits. This is like your tapeworm, your ringworm, those types of examples. One is benefiting from it and the other is harmed, even though they may not seem like it in the long run. Mutualism is both organisms benefit. For an example here, we have some lobsters and some fish that will live together in the same burrow. The lobster will create the burrow and the fish will live in there with it, and the fish is there as a way of telling when the area is safe or not safe. And then commensalism is when one organism benefits and the other is unaffected. For example, a bird living in a tree. There is no benefit to the tree that a bird is living there, but the bird gets all the benefit. So parasitism, the host is harmed and the parasite benefits. You'll see this a lot as a positive-negative relationship. The host doesn't immediately die because the parasite wants to feed on the host for a long time. And that's the biggest thing. A parasite's not going to kill its host right away. If it's doing that, it's a bad parasite because it's most likely going to die off. It wants to live off of its host for long periods of time. So we have ectoparasites, which live on the outside of the host, like aphids, lice, leeches, fleas, ticks, and mosquitoes. And then we have endoparasites, which live inside the host. So heartworm, disease-causing protists, tapeworms. If you have never seen how long a tapeworm can actually grow, here is an example of a tapeworm here. Here is a leech. Here's a lice. And here are some lice eggs. And then here you can see some that are just on the outside, the outer side of these, where you can see where they're at. So it could be like ringworm and stuff like that. Parasites have a strong negative impact on the health and reproduction of the host. Evolutions for the host to protect themselves is skin, which prevents most parasites from entering the body. Tears, saliva, and mucus defends uh, openings which parasites can enter, your eyes, nose, mouth. And our immune system have cells that may attack parasites. This next one is mutualism. This is a positive relationship. Some mutualistic relationships are so close that neither species can survive without the other. For example, pollinators. Bees, butterflies, flies, beetles, bats, and birds carry pollen between flowering plants while they feed off the pollen and nectar of that plant. It's a great example here for the fact of if there was no flowers, then there'd be no food for them. And if there was no pollinators, then the flowers wouldn't be able to reproduce. Lichens, which is a mutualistic relationship between algae and fungus, the fungus will provide water and nutrients, and the algae will use that water and nutrients for photosynthesis, providing the fungus with food. Commensalism, this is a positive zero relationship. So, for example, the cattle egret and the Cape buffalo in Tanzania. The egrets will feed off of small animals that are out of hiding just due to the movement of the buffalo. So the buffalo will walk and everything, and all these small animals and bugs will hop out of hiding, and these cattle egrets just swoop in and eat everything there. And they'll follow these buffaloes around for days, months. And that's the commensalism relationship there. Clownfish and sea anemone. The clownfish will live within the sea anemone, which offers protection against potential predators. The anemone will contain poison, which can paralyze or kill small fish and other reef inhabitants.